27th of October 2022. GM Mustard. Environmental conservation. Air pollution in context. Delhi pollution. Reasons for Delhi NCR region facing extreme particulate pollution. Geographical reasons. Location of Delhi. It lies to the northeast of the Thar Desert, to the northwest of the Central Plains and to the southwest of the Himalayas. As winds arrive from the coasts, bringing with them pollutants picked up along the way, they get trapped right before the Himalayas. Cold temperature during winter facilitate trapping of pollutants at ground level. Lack of wind as after the end of the monsoon stagnates the pollutants. Dust storm that originate in Middle East contribute to 40% of dust. Anthropogenic factors, stubble burning, in neighboring state to prepare field for next crop cycle. Manufacturing activity, power generation, construction, and transport. Lack of citizen activism. Regulation is limited to banning industrial activities but is not focused on hand-holding the transition to green energy choices. Impact on adult. 12.5% of deaths in India occurred due to air pollution. On children, more than 116,000 infants in India died within a month of birth in 2019 due to air pollution. On mother, impacts placenta and fetus. On education, lost hours due to the closure of schools. On economy, closure of industries, limits on the construction activity at sea. Steps taken by the Government Graded Response Action Plan (GRAPC). Mehta vs. Union of India 2016 for implementation under different Air Quality Index AQI categories. National Clean Air Program (NCAP) aims at reducing the concentration of PM10 and PM2.5 in 58 or Insights on India. The atmosphere by at least 20% by the year 2024, with 2017 as the base year for comparison. To mitigate stubble burning, turbo-happy seeders and biodecomposers, collecting and using stubble as fuel in boilers, to produce ethanol, or simply burning away alongside coal in thermal power plants, fungi cocktail to decompose stubble by ICR. Other measures, mobile enforcement teams to check vehicular pollution, public awareness campaigns, investment in mass rapid transport systems, and phasing out old commercial vehicles. Delhi's Green War Room, signaling the fight against the smog, is analyzing satellite data on farm fires from Punjab and Haryana to identify and deal with the culprits. Cleaner transport, push for electric vehicles. Conclusion: facing a growing environmental and health calamity, anti-pollution efforts are being strengthened. But to succeed, the different levels of government must harness the political will to invest more, coordinate across boundaries, and motivate businesses and residents to do their bit. Insta links. Air pollution. Mains links. Q. How is air pollution measured and tracked in India? What are the recent changes introduced to air pollution measurement? 15M. Prelims links. In the context of air quality guidelines, consider the following statements. UPSC 2022-1. The 24-hour mean of PM2.5 should not exceed 15 ug and the annual mean of PM2.5 should not exceed 5 ug. Though, in a year, the highest levels of ozone pollution occurred during periods of inclement weather. 3. PM10 can penetrate the lung barrier and enter the bloodstream. 4. Excessive ozone in the air can trigger asthma. Which of the statements given above is correct? A. 1. 3 and 4 Peak 1 and 4 only. C. 2. 3 and 4 Peak 1 and 2 only. Answer B. Q. Which of the following are the factors for exposure to benzene pollution? UPSC 2020 1. Automobile exhaust 2. Tobacco smoke 3. Wood burning 4. Using varnished wooden furniture 5. Using products made of polyurethane. Select the correct answer using the code given below. A. 1, 2 and 3 only. B. 2 and 4 only. C. 1, 3 and 4 only. D. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Answer D. Government notified Management Rules 2022. Context: the government has notified Waste Management Rules 2022, which will come into force from the 1st of April next year and apply to every manufacturer, producer, refurbisher, dismantler and recycler of waste. Key provisions of the rules restricted the use of hazardous substances in manufacturing electrical and electronic equipment having adverse impact on human health and the environment. Increased the range of electronic goods. Targets fixed. Producers of electronic goods have to ensure at least 60% of their electronic waste is collected and recycled by 2023. Companies will report these on an online portal. Extended producer responsibility certificates. This will allow the offset. Teeing off waste responsibility to a third party. Environmental compensation to be imposed on companies that don't meet their target. Role of state governments. Earmarking industrial space for waste dismantling and recycling facilities, undertaking industrial skill development and establishing measures for protecting the health and safety of workers engaged in the dismantling and recycling facilities for waste. Role of manufacturers. Make the end product recyclable. Role of Central Pollution Control Board. Conduct random sampling of electrical and electronic equipment placed on the market to monitor and verify the compliance of reduction of hazardous substances provisions. Impact of wastes. Toxins' harmful health impact on humans includes damage or insights on India. COM 59. To the brain, heart, liver, kidneys and skeletal system. They can also have a significant effect on neurological and reproductive systems, resulting in sickness and birth abnormalities. Waste refers to all items of electronic and electrical equipment and its parts that have been discarded by their owner as waste without the intent of reuse. India is the third largest waste generator in the world after China and the USA. Global Waste Monitor 2020. 95% of waste in India is recycled by the informal sector. Background of the issue. Under Waste Management Rules 2016, it is mandatory for the organization to comply with the extended producer responsibility of recycling waste. Complying with that, most firms outsourced recycling to organizations called Producer Responsibility Organizations Pro. CPCB has registered 74 pros. In May 2022, Environment Ministry issued a draft notification that does away with pro and dismantlers and vests all responsibility of recycling with authorized recyclers, only a handful of whom exist in India. Now, authorized recyclers will source a quantity of waste, recycle them and generate electronic certificates. Companies can buy these certificates equivalent to their annual committed target and thus do not have to be involved with engaging pros and dismantlers. Conclusion. Recent government data shows that waste recycling has doubled in the country from a rate of 10% in 2017-18 has risen to 20% in 2018-19. What is needed is a sound market-based incentive that encourages both demand and supply side factors to voluntarily adopt a waste recycling. In this respect, the waste clinic at Bhopal is a pilot project wherein waste will be collected door to door or could be deposited directly at the clinic in exchange for a fee, which needs to be studied for its success. Insta links waste management. Mains links Q. The electronic waste, or e-waste, is one of the fastest growing waste streams worldwide. Discuss the measures that are needed for the safe disposal of waste in the country. 250 words. Prelims link Q. Due to improper, indiscriminate disposal of old and used computers or their parts, which of the following are released into the environment as waste? UPSC 2013-1 Beryllium 2 Cadmium 3 Chromium 4 Heptachlor 5 Mercury 6 Lead 7 Plutonium. Select the correct answer using the codes given below. 8, 1, 3, 4, 6 and 7 only. B 1, 2, 3, 5 and 6 only. C 2, 4, 5 and 7 only. D 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. Answer B. Dynamic Groundwater Resource Assessment 2022 report. Direction. Water is always an important and favorite topic of UPSC. Always have notes prepared on the different aspects of water use. Context. An assessment report on groundwater by the Central Groundwater Board and States UTS was released recently. Under Ministry of Jal Shakti. Key findings. India is the largest user of groundwater (GW), accounting for 1/4 of total withdrawal. 87% of GW is used for irrigation. GW extraction has declined and the number of overexploited units extraction greater than recharge has decreased. Currently, 67% of GW units are safe extraction, less than 70% of recharge, 14% overexploited and 4% at the critical level. Extraction is very high in Haryana, Punjab, Rajasthan etc. Reasons for use of groundwaters in irrigation. Erratic monsoon, successive droughts and erratic rainfall have led to excess extraction of groundwater. Subsidy. Low prices of free electricity offers an incentive for the unchecked lifting of groundwater. Green revolution caused the overuse of groundwater. Water-intensive crops. Government encourages farmers to produce water-intensive crops like rice and sugarcane through increased minimum support prices (MSP). 60 Insights on India. Problems associated with such rampant use. Lowering of the water table. The World Bank predicts that by 2032, around 60% of aquifers in the country will be in a critical state. Reduction of water in streams and lakes. A substantial amount of the water flowing in rivers comes from the seepage of groundwater into the stream. Depletion of groundwater levels may reduce water flow in such streams. Land subsidence. A lack of groundwater limits biodiversity and dangerous sinkholes result from depleted aquifers. Increased costs for the user. As the depleting groundwater levels lower the water table, the user has to delve deep to extract water. This will increase the cost of water extraction. Deterioration of water quality. Groundwater that is deep within the ground often intermingles with saltwater that we shouldn't drink. Saltwater contamination can occur. Western Indian states interrupts water cycle. Groundwater depletion interrupts the natural water cycle, putting disproportionately more water into the sea. Impacts food security. As large aquifers are depleted, the food supply and people will suffer. Additional points. Concept of participatory irrigation management PIM. PIMs hinge around developing cooperation with an involvement of farmers in the operation, management, and maintenance of the irrigation systems at secondary and tertiary levels through the Water User Associations (WUAS). One water approach. Conclusion. The effective answer to the groundwater crisis is to integrate conservation and development activities, from water extraction to water management, at the local level. Making communities aware and involving them fully is therefore critical for success. Insta-links growing water crisis and one water approach over. Mains links Q. Bring out the problems associated with groundwater irrigation in India. Critically analyze the role of participatory irrigation management PIM in improving agricultural production on a sustainable basis. 15. Prelims link. Consider the following statements. UPSC 2015-1. The Accelerated Irrigation Benefits Program was launched during 1996-97 to provide loan assistance to poor farmers. Though the Command Area Development Program was launched in 1974-75 for the development of water use efficiency. Which of the statements given above are correct? A. 1 only, B. 2 only, C. Both 1 and 2, D. Neither 1 nor 2. Answer, B. Health is the focus of APOLLU. TN policy. Direction. This is from an editorial article. A few unique points can be noted down. Context. The deterioration of winter air quality in North India has once again brought to light the negative impacts of air pollution on health, particularly among the most vulnerable in society. Negative impacts of air pollution on health. According to the Lancet, excessive levels of pollution are responsible for 17.8% of all deaths and 11.5% of respiratory, cardiovascular and other related diseases in India in 2019. Gaps in India's environmental policies. Isolated nature of policy making. Whether it is stubble burning or thermal power plant emissions, decisions are made without any consideration of all. Insights on India. Com 61. Their potential effects on health. A lack of understanding of health among policymakers. As a result, policies are created and implemented with little cognizance of the effect it has on society's health. Underrepresentation of health sector representatives in policy making. As per the Commission for Air Quality Management, they comprise less than 5% of the members of state pollution control boards. Recommendations, initiatives, an exposure-centered view to policy. This means prioritizing initiatives that contribute the most to reducing exposure and hence generating health benefits. Revising National Ambient Air Quality Standards (NAAQS) to include not only local conditions but also the impact of exposure on vulnerable groups. Way ahead. This public health emergency has prompted calls for health to be prioritized in the development of air pollution policies. For this, health should be at the core of air pollution policy, rather than one of the several equally relevant facets. Frontline air pollution regulators to be more sensitive to the health needs of society. Conclusion. To primarily focus on health benefits, policymakers must include experts from epidemiology, environment, energy, transportation, public policy and economics. This approach will accelerate climate and air quality measures to limit emissions from the industries that cause the most health damage. I. Insta links. Air pollution. Mains links. Q. The worsening winter air quality in North India has yet again brought into public focus the harmful effects of air pollution on our health. This public health emergency has resulted in calls for health to be made central to air pollution policy making. Critically analyze. Prelims links. Q. Consider the following statements. 1. The National Clean Air Program aims for a reduction in particulate matter concentrations in cities that don't meet the National Ambient Air Quality Standards (NAAQS). Though India's National Ambient Air Quality Standards (NAAQS) meet the WHO's existing standards. Which of the above statements are correct? A. 1 only, B. 2 only, C. Both 1 and 2, D. Neither 1 nor 2. Solution. A. The World Health Organization, WHO has tightened global air pollution standards in a recognition of the emerging science in the last decade that the impact of air pollution on health is much more serious than earlier envisaged. The move doesn't immediately impact India as the National Ambient Air Quality Standards (NAAQS) don't meet the WHO's existing standards. The government has a dedicated National Clean Air Program that aims for a 20% to 30% reduction in particulate matter concentrations by 2024 in 122 cities, keeping 2017 as the base year for the comparison of concentration. These are cities that don't meet the NAAQS when calculated from 2011 to 2015. Is climate change affecting global health? Direction. This is taken from the Explained section of the Hindu. Previously we covered it as FFP, but here we are providing analysis. Context. As countries gather in Egypt for the ongoing COP27, a recent Lancet report traces in detail the intimate link between climate change and its influence on people's health. Highlights of the 2022 Lancet Countdown on Health and Climate Change. Overview. Climate change is not an isolated incident, but a global phenomenon, leaving its impact on almost every aspect of life. While countries are still dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, Russia's invasion of Ukraine and continued reliance on fossil fuels has driven the world into global energy and cost of living issues. The world's reliance on fossil fuels increases the risk of disease, food insecurity and other illnesses related to heat. As these crises develop, climate change accelerates, altering the foundations of human health and welfare. Health and climate change. The rapidly increasing temperatures exposed people, especially vulnerable populations, to more heatwaves in 2021 than annually between 1986 to 2005. 62 or Insights on India. The changing climate is affecting the spread of infectious diseases. Food security and climate change. Higher temperatures threaten crop yields directly, with the growing season shortening for many cereal crops. Extreme weather events disrupt supply chains, thereby undermining food availability, access, stability, and utilization. Way ahead, the pace and scale of climate change adaptation, planning, and resilience need to be increased. An accelerated transition to clean energy forms, balanced and more plant based diets. Spreading awareness through media campaigns. The government's commitment to assess and address the threats from climate change. Conclusion: a health centered response through global coordination, funding, transparency, and cooperation to reduce the vulnerabilities that the world is otherwise exposed to is the need of the hour. Insta links: climate change amplifying health impacts. Mains links: Q. Analyze the growing impacts of climate change on India. Are the steps taken so far adequate enough to tackle climate change? Who should pay for climate dam? Age. Direction. This article will help to understand why developed countries are bound to compensate poor countries for climate damage and whether India is eligible to get this compensation. Do understand the carbon border tax and why India opposed it. Context: while rich countries such as the US, Japan, and Canada pledged $20 billion to wean Indonesia off coal at the G20 summit in Bali, much more has to be done to address climate change. Background: at the ongoing COP27 to the UNFCCC in Sharm el Sheikh, Egypt, countries have agreed to discuss providing financial support to address loss and damage caused by climate change. Loss and damage refer to developing countries' demand for an institutional framework to compensate countries affected by climate change for current environmental damage. Why compensation, rich world financing poor, has been considered. Historical responsibilities of the developed world. Between 1751 to 2017, 47% of the CO2 emissions came from the US and the EU 28. Emissions affecting others disproportionately. For example, a farmer in rural Africa may say that his country has not contributed to emissions in the past, but his agricultural yields are dropping as a result of industrialization in the US or Russia. Emissions have helped a few countries. For example, Canada would see a rise in GDP of 0.3%, about $9 billion a year, as warmer climates spur agriculture and labor productivity. Calamity is fast approaching. According to the UNEP's Emissions Gap Report 2022, the world must cut emissions by 45% by 2050 to avoid global catastrophe. Emissions in India and efforts to reduce them. According to the Emissions Gap Report 2022, India is among the top 7 emitters, others being China, the EU 27, Indonesia, Brazil, the Russian Federation, and the US. However, in per capita terms, India's emissions are far less at 2.40 CO2e than others. For economic development, some GHG emissions are unavoidable. India was responsible for the wording of the agreement on coal in 2021, changing phase out to phase down, which reflects the country's huge dependence on thermal power. In addition to pledging to net zero emissions by 2070, India has committed to generating 500 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity by 2030, lowering GDP emission intensity while increasing forest cover. Insights on India. COM63. Related news. Carbon border tax. Source: TH Context. Basic countries have emphasized the need of avoiding carbon border taxes, which could promote market distortion and worsen the trust deficit among countries at COP27. About carbon border tax. A carbon border tax is an import duty based on the amount of carbon emissions produced by the goods in question. E.g., using it EU can impose import duty on cement export by India as cement production is highly carbon intensive. It discourages emissions as a carbon price. It has an impact on production and exports as a trade related measure. Background. The basic countries are a bloc of four large newly industrialized countries: Brazil, South Africa, India and China, formed in 2009 at the Copenhagen Climate Summit. The European Union (EU) proposed the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism (CBAM) in 2021, which would tax high carbon commodities like cement and steel beginning in 2026. Insta-links. Loss and damage funding officially included in the COP27 agenda. Mains links. Q. What is climate change, loss and damage? Should rich nations compensate the poor countries most vulnerable to climate change? State your opinion. 250 words. Think local climate action. Think Minangadi. Direction. The editorial article highlights the role of local bodies in the climate actions. Following examples can be used in governance or environment conservation as example case study for community engagement in conservation. Context. If India has to achieve the set of goals enunciated in the Panchamrit resolution of the COP26 Climate Summit in Glasgow 2021, it is necessary that Panchayati Raj institutions play a pivotal role in tackling many of the causes and effects of climate change. Case Study 1: Minangadi Gram Panchayat in Kerala's Wayanad district. In 2016, the Minangadi Panchayat envisaged a project called Carbon Neutral Minangadi, the aim being to transform Minangadi into a state of carbon neutrality. Actions taken. An action plan was prepared by organizing Gram Sabha meetings. The entire community was involved in the process, with school students, youth, and technical and academic institutions given different assignments. Socioeconomic surveys and energy use mapping were also carried out. Awareness program, through campaigns, classes and studies. A greenhouse gases emission inventory was prepared. Tree banking was one of landmark schemes introduced to aid carbon neutral activities, which encouraged the planting of more trees by extending interest-free loans. Over 1.5 lakh trees were planted, which have also been geotagged to monitor their growth. Local economic development was another thrust area where lead bulb manufacturing and related micro enterprises were initiated. The panchayat was found to be carbon positive. Case Study 2: Palli Gram Panchayat in Jammu and Kashmir. It followed the same people-centric model, with specific local activities. The panchayat has prepared a climate-resilient plan where villagers have been made aware of climate change mitigation factors. Biogas plants and solar panels were also introduced. A solar plant 500 kilowatts has been installed to power 340 households. A Gram Panchayat development plan for 2022-23 is being prepared by integrating a climate resilient plan. Case Study 3: Clean and Green Village. Theme: Ministry of Panchayati Raj has focused its attention on localizing the Sustainable Development Goals (SDGs) on a thematic basis. Clean and Green Village is one of the themes under it. Under this theme, panchayats can take up activities on natural resource management, biodiversity protection, waste management, and afforestation activities. Over 1 lakh gram panchayats have prioritized Clean or Green Village as one of their focus areas for 2020-23. 64 or Insights on India. Com. COP 27 ends. Loss and Damage Fund, other agendas adopted. Direction. The article highlights the agenda and outcomes of COP27. We have previously done a few articles on this, but this article shows the final outcome of COP27. Context. All agendas, including the Loss and Damage Fund and the Sharm el Sheikh Implementation Plan, were adopted during the UNFCCC COP27 closing ceremony in Sharm el Sheikh, Egypt. Background. Delegates from 197 countries, all are of the Paris Climate Accord, gathered at the 27th session of the Conference of the Parties COP27. They came together to find a solution to prevent global temperatures from reaching 2 degrees Celsius above the long-term average temperature between 1951 and 1980. What was on the agenda of COP27? Mitigation. The goal of mitigation is to keep global temperatures below 2 degrees Celsius. However, progress since COP26 has been severely inadequate. Emissions Gap Report 2022. Adaptation. According to the Global Climate Risk Index, developing and poor countries Mozambique, South Sudan, India, etc. were the countries most affected by extreme weather events in 2019. Over $350 million and $600 million were pledged to the Adaptation Fund and the Least Developed Countries Fund at COP26. Finance. At the 2009 COP15 meeting, developed countries agreed to pledge $100 billion by 2020, extended until 2025 during COP21 to assist developing countries in dealing with climate change. Collaboration. There is the need to call upon governments, public society, and the private sector to collaborate to change the way humans interact with the world. Outcomes of the COP27 on these agendas. The Sharm el Sheikh Implementation Plan. It emphasized that a global transition to a low-carbon economy will require at least $4-6 trillion in annual spending. Mitigation Work Program. This would begin this year and last until 2030. Governments were requested to revisit and strengthen the 2030 targets in their national climate plans by the end of 2023. To accelerate efforts to phase down unabated coal power and phase out inefficient fossil fuel subsidies. To reduce greenhouse gases GHGs in applicable sectors through increased renewable and low emission energy. Loss and Damaged COP27 adopted the basic demand of a fund to acknowledge assistance needed for particularly vulnerable developing countries. However, there is no agreement yet on how finance should be provided and where it should come from. Fossil fuels. India wanted to include a commitment to phase down all fossil fuels and not just coal. But the resolution failed. Other outcomes: the new collective quantified goal on climate finance and the global goal on adaptation, which is equivalent to the global goal on mitigation of limiting global temperatures to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The CMA countries who have signed and ratified the Paris Agreement also adopted Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, which allows countries to voluntarily cooperate with each other to achieve emission reduction targets set out in their NDCs. World Bank reforms: recapitalization of the development banks to allow them to provide far more assistance to the developing world. Challenges ahead: no contributions have been pledged to the fund. Extra burden on the developing countries. They have been asked to revise their climate action plans (NDCs) with progressively stronger actions every year. Developed countries have failed to meet their commitment. For example, mobilizing a relatively small sum of 100 billion United States dollars. Way ahead: to provide funding for mitigation and adaptation. The financial system and its structures and processes will need to be transformed, involving governments, central banks, commercial banks, institutional investors, and other financial actors. Interlinks: loss and damage funding officially included in the COP27 agenda. Or insights on India. COM65. Mains links, Q. Describe the major outcomes of the 26th session of the Conference of the Parties COP2, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change (UNFCCC). What are the commitments made by the India Conference? UPSC 2021. Prelims links, Q. Consider the following statements regarding Green Climate Fund (GCF). A. It is a fund established within the framework of the UNFCCC. Though the fund's investments can be in the form of grants only. 3. GCF has established a direct access modality so that national and sub-national organizations can receive funding directly, rather than only via international intermediaries. Which of the above statements are correct? A. 1 only B 1, 2 only C 1, 3 only D, all of the above. Solution, C. Disaster management. How suspension bridges work in the tragedy in Morbi. Context: the century-old cable suspension bridge in Gujarat's Morbi collapsed into the river, sending hundreds plunging into the water. The bridge was a tourist attraction and had long been hailed as a magnificent engineering marvel. Technical reasons for the collapse of the 19th century pedestrian bridge are: 1. Overcrowding. 2. Crowd-induced vibrations. 3. End of the service life. Probable cause of such disasters: coming out of the long restrictions on travel necessitated by the COVID-19 pandemic, people all over the world appear to be binging on travel and outings. How to mitigate such kinds of disasters? Safe and sustainable tourism. Tourist and pilgrimage centers around the country should carry out safety and environmental audits to ensure that crowd management and safety protocols are in place. Development of new centers where large numbers of people are expected should account for such contingencies. The rapid pace of road and infrastructure development in ecologically sensitive areas such as the Himalayas should be in accordance with topographic limitations. Tourism promotion campaigns must include creating safety awareness among visitors and local officials. More must be done to regulate the flow of travelers according to the infrastructure capacity of particular destinations. What is a suspension bridge? Suspension bridges suspend the roadway by cables, ropes, or chains from two tall towers. How does it work? Suspension bridges depend on the balance of the forces of compression and tension. The design ensures that the load on the suspension cables is transferred to the towers at the two ends, which transfer them further by vertical compression to the ground by way of the anchorage cables. All of this balancing has to happen within the permissible weight restrictions for the bridge. Way forward, any bridge open for public transport should conform to prescribed standards and specifications and is safe in all respects to be carrying passenger traffic. There should be a mechanism to audit the development work of bridges across the country. There should be proper guidelines detailing the do's and don'ts. 66 or Insights on India. Com. History of the Pool Bridge. It was a pedestrian suspension bridge that was inaugurated in 1879. The bridge was made during the reign of Sir Wagji Ravaji, the Thakur Sahib of Morbi. Sir Wagji is credited with planning and building the entire city of Morbi. Morbi. Morbi in Gujarat is famous for its ceramic industry. The district is dotted by several hundred ceramic producing factories, mainly medium and small scale units. Around 70% of India's ceramics are produced in Morbi. Machu River. Machu is a small river that rises in the Madlar Hills and flows 130 kilometers into the Run of Kutch. Indian Bridge Management System. Mains guest discuss the recent measures initiated in disaster management by the Government of India departing from the earlier reactive approach. CSE 2020. Challenges to internal security. The Rajiv Gandhi assassination case, and why Supreme Court has freed all convicts. Context. Many have divided opinions on the Supreme Court's recent decision to free all six remaining convicts serving life sentences in the Rajiv Gandhi assassination case. Background. Former Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated by a suicide bomber in Sriperumbudur, Tamil Nadu, on the night of May 21, 1991, killing 18 people. In the case, the TADA or Terrorist and Disruptive Activities Prevention Act trial caught initially convict. At 26 people to death. In 1999, a few years after the TADA Act was repealed, the SC upheld the conviction of only 7 convicting 4 of them to death and the other 3 to life imprisonment releasing the rest. By 2014, the SC commuted the death sentences of all 4 to life imprisonment. The Tamil Nadu government had recommended the release of all convicts. However, the governor had not acted upon this recommendation. The convicts had spent more than 3 decades in prison, where their conduct was satisfactory. Invoking its extraordinary power under Article 142 of the Indian Constitution, the recent SC order noted that none of the 6 convicts was a part of the nucleus of the assassination team. Definition of terrorism. According to the TADA, terrorism involves all or any one of the 4 acts overawing threatening government, striking terror in the people, alienating a section of the people, adversely affecting social harmony, As per Tata, killing a person bound by oath under the Constitution to uphold the sovereignty and integrity of India or any public servant was deemed a disruptive activity. Grounds on which convicts were released. The prosecution's case was that the assassination was an act to prevent the government from continuing with the implementation of the 1987 India-Sri Lanka Accord. The SC said that for an act to qualify under the definition of terrorism, its intent is critical. It is difficult for the court to conclude that the conspirators intended to overawe and endanger the government of India or to strike terror in people or any section thereof. There is no evidence that any one of the conspirators ever desired the death of any Indian other than Rajiv Gandhi. Unfortunately, Rajiv Gandhi was not then a person bound by oath under the constitution to uphold the sovereignty and integrity of India, as the Lok Sabha had been dissolved months before the incident. Insta links, terrorism. Mains links, Q. All terrorists are criminals, but not all criminals are terrorists. In light of the statement above, explain in what way anti-terror laws in the country have led to a period of over-criminalization. Or Insights on India. Com 67. Development of Great Nicobar. Strategic imperative and ecological concerns. Direction. The article is an example of the development vs environment debate. It also contains key points about Great Nicobar Island and its strategic and environmental significance for India. Context. The Union Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change gave environmental clearance for the ambitious 72,000 crore rupees development project on the strategically important Great Nicobar Island. Background. The idea of developing Great Nicobar was first proposed in the 1970s, and its significance for national security and the consolidation of the Indian Ocean region has been emphasized time and again. In recent years, increasing Chinese assertiveness in the Bay of Bengal and the Indo-Pacific has added urgency to this requirement. About the Great Nicobar Island. The Andaman and Nicobar Islands are a cluster of about 836 islands in the eastern Bay of Bengal, the two groups of which are separated by the 150-wide 10-degree channel Andaman Islands in the north and the Nicobar Islands to the south. Great Nicobar, the southernmost of the islands, has an area of 910 square km. Indira Point, the southern tip of Great Nicobar Island, is India's southernmost point and is less than 150 kilometers from the northernmost island of the Indonesian archipelago. The Great Nicobar Island has tropical wet evergreen forests, mountain ranges reaching almost 650 meters above sea level, and coastal plains. It is rich in biodiversity with some endangered species of mammals, birds, reptiles and amphibians. The leatherback sea turtle is the island's flagship species. Great Nicobar is home to two national parks, Campbell Bay and Galathea, a biosphere reserve, and the Shompen and Nicobarese tribal peoples. The approximately 8,000 settlers, ex-servicemen from Punjab, Maharashtra and Andhra Pradesh who were settled on the island in the 1970s who live on the island are engaged in agriculture, horticulture, and fishing. Strategic location of the island. Great Nicobar is equidistant from Colombo to the southwest and Port Klang and Singapore to the southeast, and is near the East-West International Shipping Corridor, which handles a significant portion of the world's shipping trade. The proposed projects: a Greenfield City and International Container Transshipment Terminal (ICTT), a Greenfield International Airport, a power plant, a township for the personnel who will implement the project. Significance of the projects: economic strategy. By becoming a major player in cargo transshipment, the island can participate in the regional and global maritime economy. It will promote tourism to the island. Employment opportunities, as over 2.5 lakh direct and indirect jobs are likely to be created on the island. Increasing the presence of the Indian Armed Forces, as the port will be controlled by the Indian Navy, while the airport will have dual military civilian control. The government's greater goal is to leverage the locational advantage of the island for economic and strategic reasons. Concerns: an ecologically important and fragile region. The loss of tree cover will not only affect the flora and fauna on the island, but it will also lead to increased runoff and sediment deposits in the ocean, impacting the coral reefs and mangroves. According to the government, expediting the project is of paramount national security and strategic importance. The development area is only a small percentage of the area of the island and its forest cover, and 15% of 68 or Insights on India. The development area itself will be green cover and open spaces. A conservation plan for the leatherback turtle is also being put in place. Way ahead, India has successfully translocated a coral reef from the Gulf of Mannar to the Gulf of Kutch earlier. The Zoological Survey of India is currently in the process of assessing how much of the reef will have to be relocated for the project. Interlinks, developing the sister islands of the Indian Ocean. Mains links, Q. In recent years, India has adopted a proactive policy aimed at transforming the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Examine the strategic and economic importance of the Andaman or Nicobar Islands for India. 250 words. Prelims links, Q. Andaman and Nicobar Islands are separated from each other by a 10-degree channel B, 9-degree channel C, 8-degree channel D, 12-degree channel answer A. Various security forces and agencies and their mandate. CDs must proceed with caution. Directions: this article has been taken from the Indian Express editorial. Go through it once, you can use it for value addition. What is CDs? He is the single point military advisor to the government as suggested by the Kargil Review Committee in 1999. CDs oversees and coordinates the working of the three services. Upper age limit for the CDs has been fixed at 65 years. He will function as the principal military advisor to the defense minister and also as the permanent chairman of the Chiefs of Staff Committee (COSC). The CDs will be a member of the Defense Acquisition Council and Defense Planning Committee. Challenges before India's newly appointed CDs. Management of two live borders, force modernization, competing budgetary claims and new personnel policies, and pressure to expedite the creation of new joint command structures. What is Integrated Theatre Command? An integrated theatre command envisages a unified command of the three services, under a single commander, for geographical areas that are of strategic and security concern. The commander of such a force will be able to bear all resources at his disposal, from the Army, the Indian Air Force, and the Navy, with seamless efficacy. The integrated theater commander will not be answerable to individual services. What are joint commands? It is a unified command in which the resources of all the services are unified under a single commander looking at a geographical theater. Functions of Joint Command. The commander of a joint command will have the freedom to train and equip his command. He will have the logistics of all the services at his beckoning. However, the three services will retain their independent identities as well. Fig. General Bipin Rawat is no more. Why the new CDs must move with caution. The threat of China. Any conflict with China will demand forces resources from 4 to 6 of India's 14 single service and 2 tri-service commands, none of them co-located, as well the space and cyber agencies and the Special Forces Division. Insights on India. Com 69. Inter-service rivalry. There exists inter-service rivalry among the forces which is delaying the establishment of joint commands. Operational guidance issue. While the component commanders may retain a linkage with their chiefs, the question of who will provide operational guidance to the theater commanders still remains open. Air power. The indivisibility of air power has been a bone of contention among the officials of defense forces. What needs to be done? Integrating the service command into 4 to 5 geographic or threat-based theaters and placing necessary forces under a single commander charged with the conduct of operations. Reconciling service rivalry. The service chiefs have to reconcile themselves to the reality that once theater commanders assume the war fighter role, they will be divested of operational responsibilities and assume the raise train sustain functions involving recruitment and training of personnel as well as the acquisition of combat wherewithal. Nudging IAF. The IAF's reluctance to share assets must be tempered by the fact that the theater air assets will be deployed on the advice of and by the IAF component commanders. Recasting of present staff colleges. As a joint services staff college, with changes in its curriculum to produce joint staff officers ready to serve in sister service HQS, learning in the process to function as future component commanders and theater commanders. Insta links. Prelims link about the Tri-Service Command of India Kargil Review Committee. Shekatkar Committee Power and Functions of CDs. Mains links. 1. The Chief of Defense Staff (CDs) is responsible not only for the integration of the armed forces but also for solving issues in planning, budgeting and force structuring for a military based on a coherent strategic vision. Analyze. Go. What are integrated theater commands? Discuss the prospects and challenges faced in the implementation of integrated